Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is the place where we help mission-driven messengers just like you learn how to build and monetize your personal brand. My name is Rory Vaden, and I'm the co-founder of Brand Builders Group, a Hall of Fame speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. And this show is to help experts learn how to become more wealthy and well-known. I know you're going to love it. Thanks for being here. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. Today's one of those special days where I get to introduce a good friend, and not only a friend, but also someone that we are a client of. And so I'm so excited to have you on the show today, Vincent. And before I formally introduce you, as I always do for anyone who's listening, I want to tell everyone a couple of reasons why I think that this is one of those universal episodes applicable to anyone. Number one, the trends in technology are changing at
so fast,
exponential rate that it's literally one of those things, like if you're not watching it, it will pass you by. So we're going to talk a lot about what are those trends, what has changed over the last 5 years, but more importantly, what do you need to know right now in the digital space to capitalize on this content economy that we're living in? So that's the first thing. That is why it is applicable to anyone. If you're online, this will have application to you. Number two, we're going to talk about the rise of the personal brand and what that really means, and what is a personal brand, what people think it is, but also how does that influence marketing and consumer behavior today. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then number three, we're going to talk about the biggest topic that everyone is talking about, no matter who you are, where you are, the voice of AI and automation and how that applies to your business today. So as you guys are listening and deciding, is this one of those episodes that's for me? Now you know that this is for you, right? So that's why you need to stick around and listen to the entire show. But now let me introduce you to my good friend. Now I can give you a casual introduction of Vincent and why I think he's wicked smart and so helpful, but his team is also just as helpful. There's very few vendors that I would raise two hands and say has been a pleasure to work with from top to bottom, and Vincent's company, Vyten, is one of those companies. But he also has lots of other accolades. So let me give you a quick formal introduction, and then we'll get going. First and foremost, Vincent is the founder and CEO. He's the owner of Vyten, which is a mobile app company, and in our world, specifically and uniquely designed to help build personal brand apps, which I think is just amazing. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. But more than that, he is a 3-time CMO at different technology companies, healthcare companies. He's done anything from AI enterprise startups to creating digital events in the digital landscape. When the pandemic shut down everything, Vincent was one of the few pioneers who took everything online and built online communities kind of overnight. He's also has an amazing personal brand of his own. And I love that he's a dad of 2 girls. He's a girl dad. And I get to see his girls every Sunday at church. And honestly, you're just an awesome dude. And so I'm so excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, AJ. It's awesome being here. And, likewise with you and the BBG team, it has been like such a pleasure to be able to work with the team. And every single time that we come to one of the BBG events, I learn so much just, being an ear on the wall, being able to just hear. But, the community has just been incredible. You mentioned Vyten a little bit, and we don't talk externally a lot about our mission, but our mission is to help people live healthier, happier lives. And we do a lot of that work. We're a technology company. We build mobile apps. We integrate AI into mobile apps. But we accomplish that work through partnerships with companies like yours and like with the BBG folks and community, because our work just amplifies and allows them to be able to get their message out there.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's what marketing should do. Good marketing should do just what you said. It's to help people live healthier, happier, more productive lives, and to get messages out into the world. And I feel like, at least in the last, I'll call it 10 years, that there has been such an oversaturation of bad marketing.
There's a lot of noise out there.
There's a lot of noise. And maybe bad is a strong word, but I would say not aligned marketing with the way that you do it. And so I'd love to start with this question because I think it's really important to set the tone for where we are today and I think where we're all heading. What would you say are some of like the biggest mistakes or trends or challenges that you've seen in the marketing space in the last 5 years that have brought us to where we are today with AI?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Like there are things in marketing that will always be. Good messaging, good copywriting will always be important to marketing. And that, like, I take a look at marketing strategies versus marketing tactics. Marketing tactics change all the time, right? When you look backwards and you take a look at 10 years ago, Facebook groups had massive visibility. You saw businesses building off of these Facebook groups that had 100,000, 200,000 people and a lot of reach. So the number one thing is really the algorithms from the large social media companies are shifting and changing constantly, and the platforms themselves are shifting and changing as well. They've consolidated a little bit with Meta purchasing and like growing through acquisition. But when you take a look at earlier this year, I think the TikTok ban was like the scariest and also like the biggest moment where you say, hey, some people have built literally millions, their entire business off of TikTok. And you see the deplatforming that has happened. You know, there's never been real proof of a shadow ban, but you hear all the time people talking about, you know, one day my reach just fundamentally changed overnight. So I would say that deplatforming, the algorithm shifts are the number one thing that has changed. You know, we have been told for forever that you should own your audience, build an email list. But the big change now with the new iPhone is AI is built into the fundamental hardware and software of the new iPhones. Your email preview, right? That first line of an email newsletter is now an AI summary. Your inbox is
Which, quite honestly, I despise. I hate that. I'm like, that is not what I want. It's like, I'm every time I look at my phone, I'm like, what am I looking at?
Yeah, what am I reading at?
But that's just the beginning.
That's the beginning of it, right? And so emails now have an algorithm because it's being sorted into your primary, your updates, your promotion tab, and even text messages from unknown numbers are being sorted into on iMessage, a different folder as well. And so the ability to be able to communicate and reach your audience directly, whether you are a local brick and mortar, right, and you have information that you want to be able to send out about specials, about new staff members, about promotions, about retreats, and all of that information, or whether you're building an online business, is the exact same thing. You want the ability to be able to reach your audience as directly as much as possible, and for you to be able to own and control that relationship. Now, we've talked about like AI in terms of the impact that it's having on your business, but AI can also be a huge tailwind as well if your business is leveraging it. And so, you know, the three biggest trends and changes are these platform and algorithm changes, the way that you communicate directly with your community, and then the third one is how you're leveraging AI or not leveraging AI.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting because I think I'd like to hit each of those just really quickly individually for a little bit more context. And this could easily, just so everyone knows, be an 8-hour interview, and we're going to cram it into like 55 minutes. But I think it's this algorithm conversation is something that has impacted everyone, and it's likely not going to stop changing. Like, it's going to keep changing. What do we do about that?
I think the biggest thing is just understanding the trends in the marketplace, because if you take a look at the adoption curve of any technology, you know, there is a place where you will have early adopters that will adopt something. The biggest example, I think, of early adopters adopting something quickly was Clubhouse. Like, remember the week where Clubhouse was just like everywhere that everywhere was.
Just as quickly went away.
And then just as quickly went away. The question is like, how do you take a look at platforms and changes and you say, hey, Clubhouse had its moment, right? But when it went away, how do you not let that become the distraction to your life and business? Whereas you have other instances like podcasting as a trend or TikTok as a trend, where you say, hey, this is not just early adopters. This has the potential to become mainstream, and you see the value in it. And to ensure that you are understanding how you can jump on that wave and on that trend. Once you start taking a look at those trends, the next step is to take a look in your funnel. So for anybody who's not a marketer by trade, in your marketing funnel, at the top of the funnel, you have awareness. At the bottom of the funnel, you have your conversions or your purchases. And you have to take a look at how that content strategy fits into your overall funnel. Today, we're in a moment where at the top of the funnel, it's all about shorts.
Yeah.
And all about shorts means we're talking about Instagram Reels, we're talking about TikToks, and we're talking about YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts are showing up in Google searches. TikToks and Instagram Reels have crazy virality if your messaging resonates with folks online, but those are not conversion events. The conversion events happen towards the bottom of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel is where you don't just go broad, you go deep.
Yeah.
And going deep means long form content like podcasts. Going deep means the ebooks that are actually still working if the ebooks have a lot of value, where you can walk somebody through that journey.
It's interesting as you say that, because you said earlier there's a difference between marketing strategies and like marketing tactics. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're talking about right now. It's like, I think a lot of us don't have a good marketing strategy, right? We're being tempted with all the tactics to grow followings and, go viral without understanding, like, no, there's a conversion strategy that at the end of the day, that's what marketing is doing. It's driving awareness and driving them to make a decision on something. And that's a strategy that has to be in place before all these other things happen.
Absolutely. Because a question that a lot of early entrepreneurs ask is like, where should I be, right? Mm-hmm. And and the where should I be is the quintessential marketing tactic question, because it's asking what social media channel should I be on? And the irony of the whole thing is like, my favorite answer to that is wherever you're the most comfortable. Right? Wherever you're the most comfortable is going to be the channel where you're going to enjoy creating content the most, and you have the best chance of sustainably doing that over the course of a year. Because a year putting out content in the same channel is about what it takes to be able to start growing your community. That community doesn't need to be massive, right? Online, there's like the concept of the 1,000 true fans that many of us have heard about, where you can have 1,000 people that are really passionate about what you're doing. And this is not my concept. This is, a concept that is taught pretty frequently. But that could be on Substack. Right? If you're not a camera person, you're not a video person, it could be Substack. If you are comfortable with audio, that could be in podcast format. But I think the biggest piece, though, is how you take a look at how creating that long form content goes into a flywheel. Mm-hmm. And that flywheel results in other different types of content coming out of it. Right. Yeah. And you see companies like BBG doing this really well, where this long form podcast will get clipped into smaller clips. It'll get those clips can get turned into blog posts. Those blog posts can turn into captions. And so, the long form content is really great for being able to batch content. The shorter content is how you start reaching people top of funnel.
Yeah, no, I think that's so good. And that's back to the strategy. Mm-hmm. And we all need a strategy in place before we just throw mud on a wall and it's like, why isn't it working? Well, it takes work for it to work.
Takes work.
Now, this AI component of it, because I think the fact that AI, we don't even have the option to use it. And I think that's what I want everyone to grasp right now. And what Vincent said earlier is that truly, it's being hardwired into the new iPhones. And that's not the only place. Mm-hmm. It's now coming as a templated part of everyday use business tools. Yes. This is not something we get to choose to use. This isn't something that we're like, oh, no, it's being fed to us now. Mm-hmm. It's not an option. It's happening all around us. And so there are still some people who are pretty adverse to it.
Yep.
Just like there are still people adverse to social media, and probably some that are still adverse to email, surprisingly. But I think the point is no, it is happening. It is here. This isn't something we're talking about. It's not a choice we have. And so in this world of AI, what would you say when it comes to marketing and personal brands? Like, what's the number one thing that all of us listening, and selfishly me, what do we need to know? Like, what do we need to embrace? What do we need to be proactive about when it comes to utilizing AI?
I think that's such a great question. I think I see AI as like the great equalizer. And what I mean by that is there are technology trends that allow solopreneurs, local businesses, small businesses to be able to compete on the same world stage as large corporations. AI is one of those enablers. And what I mean by that is in 2017, I was the CMO of a SaaS startup, a software company based in San Francisco. We were venture backed, and we were using AI back in 2017 to be able to answer customer service tickets on behalf of our clients with a success rate of like 70% of tickets being solved by AI. And, back then, that was something that like your average person had no idea that large brands could even do that. And that was a good 4 or 5 years before ChatGPT hit the market, right? What ChatGPT did was not new technology necessarily, because large corporations always had data scientists, always had software engineers to be able to automate that type of stuff. What large language models have done is actually make that accessible
to everybody,
to small and medium-sized businesses. And that is something that is incredibly wild, right? When you take a look at what large companies used to do was make these large investments in technology, and it allows them to be able to compete in a completely different way than normal companies. In the personal brand space, Kim Kardashian put out her first mobile app in 2014. Mr. Beast put out his first mobile app in 2020. Tony Robbins put out his first mobile app in, I think, 2 years later. I want to say it was 2022. And so when you're taking a look at individuals that are putting together personal brands, you look at that upstream and you're just like, well, all of them are doing it. Why, I think, is the number one question. And that why has a lot to do with the filtering and the AI and the algorithms, because they're seeing the trends of what's happening in email marketing with open rates lingering around 31% and declining every single day. All of us are getting hundreds of emails a day, and we know that. And the mobile apps allow them to be able to send push notifications and engage like never before, right? And so even when you take a look for anybody who's running online businesses and is familiar with launches, right? So launching is a concept where you're providing value, you're nurturing your audience, you might have some type of live event, and then after that, you might open up a membership. Launches historically have been done through email marketing, where you would send emails. And then after that, we saw that some people started launching with social media and email. And, some of the best launches today are actually happening with online events that occur in a mobile app, and it's push notifications, social media, and email. And this was something that wasn't accessible in the past. And we're starting to see companies being able to bring this type of technology and making it available to anybody.
It's interesting because you just mentioned like so many different channels, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think that's what's overwhelming for someone who's, the solopreneur, or they have a really small team, or they're just starting out, and it's like, oh my gosh, you just talking about email marketing, and now there's social media, and then there's all the different social media platforms, and now there's personal brand apps. And so if you were to narrow it down, right, to like, what are the most fundamental and successful marketing channels that someone should start with, what would you say?
I think start with is the answer that I had earlier, which is where you're the most comfortable, right? I think if I was to take a look second to where you're the most comfortable, I would say it is, where is your avatar, your ideal customer? Where are they hanging out already today? And where they're hanging out already today is very different. I mean, there are some communities that build off of Pinterest. I have not used Pinterest since I think my wife and I got married almost 10 years ago, because that was where our wedding, Pinterest board was. But, I know somebody who they basically have like your ultimate Walt Disney World guide. And that actually is a business that gets a lot of their business from organic Pinterest. I built an app that's called Dad's Club. So you mentioned kind of like my passion there at trying to become the best father that I possibly can be. And I'm not a parenting expert. I'm just like trying to figure it out every single day, doing the best that I can. When I launched the Parents Club app, I actually had QR code flyers in pediatrician offices because that's where my ideal avatar was it was a new dad who was going to either prenatal visits or, newborn visits at the pediatrician's office. And so I think that's where online can get complicated with a lot of the funnels, but fundamentally it's a lot easier to go to where your audience is as opposed to try to get them to come to you.
Oh, I love that. And I think that's good. Start with where you're most comfortable. And then 2, go to where your avatar is, right? You got to go to where your audience is, wherever that may be.
Yeah.
And I was cracking up internally because you mentioned Pinterest, and that's how I am with TikTok. It's like people are like, hey, they're always sending me TikTok videos. Hey, you got to watch this video. I'm like, I can't see it. I don't have an account.
Yeah.
And they're like, why? And I'm like, it's just not my place. Like my avatar is not there and I'm not comfortable on the platform, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not present there.
Totally.
Can't see anything there. And I think there's a lot of truth to that is 1, you got to enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise you're not going to do it. And 2, most importantly, your avatar has to be there in order for you to actually do the thing you're trying to do, which is reach the person that you're trying to serve.
Yep.
So I think that's really wise and sage advice. What are some of the common mistakes that you see personal brands making when it comes to all that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think one of the most common mistakes is not figuring out who you're serving and trying to be everything to everybody. That ends up being something that's really dangerous. And, for anybody listening to this podcast, likely already knows Brand Builders Group, BBG, has brand DNA as a portion of, how do you figure out who to best serve and to take a look at the messaging to be able to serve that person well. And for all of our folks who are building personal brand apps, this is something that we absolutely recommend early on because, your story, you have a story in terms of who you are and the transformation that you've had in your life. And being able to have that message really resonate with somebody else, there are components of that personal story, how you felt and how you feel now that needs to be able to end up in your messaging. And today, this is where leveraging the AI can really, really help in whether it's doing the research or tactically being able to just generate different types of messaging to test. And you hear a lot about testing when it comes to paid media, just because you can test with different audiences. But if somebody's not investing in paid ads, you can just as easily test in captions, right, on your Instagram posts. But, I think social media today, a lot of it is just putting a lot out there, taking a look at what's working and doing more of what's working. There's places like email subject lines where you can take a look at testing as well. But AI, it used to be that you would have to hire a copywriter to be able to write out these 6, 7 different versions of something. And today, that's where AI allows the small and local business owner to be able to have the same types of resources as a company that does have a full-time copywriter.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. And I want to say it was Gary Vee who quoted this at an event we were at last year. And he said, no one should fear AI taking your job. You should only fear AI if you don't integrate AI into your job.
Yes.
Right? It's like, it's not going to replace jobs. It's going to replace people who refuse to use it in their job.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what you just said. It's like, it's forcing there to be a quicker turnaround. It's forcing speed. It's forcing deliverability. What used to be acceptable to wait 30 days on a copywriter, it's like, no, I want it today.
Yeah.
Like end of day.
Yeah. And, I was walking last week with a good friend, Ashton Shanks. He's building an AI company. Previously, he was 7-8 figure marketing agency owner. And we were talking about like how AI is going to evolve and kind of like internally what we're seeing inside of our own companies. And the biggest thing is like, it's not necessarily replaced jobs, but it's made everybody on the team more efficient. And from a productivity standpoint, the folks on my team that are using AI are getting more done in the same length of time. And I think that's been the biggest change, is that some of the really highly repetitive types of work we've been able to leverage AI for, so that we can spend more time on the strategy and the stuff that's actually going to move the needle. And, being able to leverage the AI is really important. I think that, you and I, you had just mentioned like people who are AI adverse. I think the AI aversion, a lot of it comes from like, well, I tried it out and like, it's just not good. Right. And that part has a lot to do with like continuing to experiment, but also feeding your own content in.
Yeah.
I think like step one, so for anybody who is listening to this saying, I am one of those AI adverse people, like what are the first 3 steps that I can take to try it? I think a common one is trying to use the AI to write something for you. But if you put a prompt in and the AI just puts something out where you're just like, this is not aligned with how we write, this is not aligned with how I speak, this is not aligned with my values, the next step after that is to take the stuff that you have written, or take podcast episodes and transcripts of podcasts that you've been on, and to feed that in and to help the AI understand what you sound like, how you speak, and the types of things and methodologies that are aligned with you. And the more and more that you do this, the AI starts to understand you even better. And, this is no different than onboarding a new employee into your company, right? Because
you got to train them up.
You got to train them up, right? You put a job description out there, you welcome somebody in, but on day one, that person is not going to understand everything about you and your company and how you work until you start helping that person understand that.
It's literally, as you were talking, what it made me think about is AI is only going to be helpful to you when you actually know what it is you want it to do.
Yes.
Like with any good communication, right? If you're not clear in the questions, you're never going to get the answers that you want, right? If you're not clear in what results you want, then it's really hard to give good instructions, which makes the strategy part all that more important for this to even be able to help you. Otherwise, it's going to be bad. It's going to be not good. And people are like, oh, this is terrible. And it's like, no, it's not terrible. Your communication to it was terrible. No different than a new hire or an employee. It's like you give them bad instructions, they're not able to do the job. This is no different.
It's no different. So in 2019, my first daughter, Lily, was born. She's about 5 years old right now, but that was the year that I started Dad's Club. And, with Dad's Club, starting in 2019, early 2020, I had a copywriter on the team. And, Dad's Club is a mobile app where it's got parenting book audio summaries. And I had somebody that was reading those books, summarizing those books, and then writing scripts for me.
Like an actual human doing
like an actual human doing that. Right. And, that costs a lot of money.
A lot of money and a lot of time.
And a lot of time to be able to do that. Today, if I wanted to do a new audiobook summary, we're talking about, it's 15 minutes.
That's crazy.
To be able to prepare for it, and another 10 minutes to be able to record that. And then after that, it's editing. But we're talking about something that used to take a week to be able to do can now be done in an hour. And it's the exact same steps. Back then, like I still had to give instructions to that writer.
Sure.
I still had to give feedback for revisions. The only thing that's different now is, the AI is going to be more consistent, is going to be faster, but you can't skip the steps of telling it exactly what you want it to do.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And I think it's really important that you mentioned that this app, right? So we mentioned earlier that Vincent is the CEO and founder of Vyten, and they build mobile apps. And in our unique world, they, build this awesome personal brand app. And I'd love to talk about that a little bit, because I think there's a trend heading in that direction because of all the things that you mentioned, where the algorithms on all the platforms are constantly changing and will continue to change for the benefit of those platforms, not necessarily for the benefit of the content creator as it is. Then two is the decline trend in open rates in email marketing. Because you're right. It's like we have heard this, and I'm a big believer of like, no, you have to own your contacts, right? You're not building your audience on rented real estate for other people. No offense, Mark Zuckerberg or anyone else, but it's like, I'm not trying to build your empire, right? I'm trying to create my own community. However, now with AI and all these things in your inboxes, it's like, they're not getting your emails.
No.
They're not opening your emails. And it's like, this is a whole new world of everything that is no more, right? It is changing rapidly. And at the speed of technology, it's like, you cannot keep up. And then you mentioned things like push notifications and mobile apps. And I think there is this rise to this concept of, well, how do I consolidate all of my content to make it easier for people to access, my information so they don't have to go to YouTube, then Instagram, then my podcast, then X, then TikTok, but then also the ability to reach them. So let's talk about like, what is a personal brand app? When, you mentioned a few of these, like Kim Kardashian's happened more than a decade ago. What is it? What do they do? And what are the trends that you see towards this?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is when you take a look longer over the course of like a century, there are always changes in how to be able to reach folks. So newspapers and the printing press, like if you go back that long, there was the evolution of that to radio, to TV, to websites, to mobile apps, to the push notifications that mobile apps are able to send now. And being able to evolve with them oftentimes starts with the larger players in the market that can afford it, and then becomes accessible to the masses. And that's what's happening, to your point, with the personal brand apps that we're seeing now. So a personal brand app allows you to be able to think about all of the things in your LinkedIn bio, right, that you put in your LinkedIn bio today. When somebody clicks that, they're going to click on one of the 7 links in there. And then you may or may not ask for an email address, depending on what one of those 7 links are. And when you get that email address, you can send emails to them, but they have an open rate that's under 50% and a click-through rate that's like 2 to 3%. The game changer with these personal brand apps are, if you're listening to this right now and you're wearing an Apple Watch, you get notifications on your Apple Watch. If you have an Apple HomePod in your house, you get notifications on your HomePod even when you're away from your phone. But for the phone that all of us carry around today, we on average spend 5 hours a day on our phone, on our smartphones. Like, everybody has a smartphone, and 90% of that time is spent inside of a mobile app.
Yeah, that's wild.
And I don't even, my phone's across the room. This is the furthest I've ever been from my phone. But if I had my phone, you don't even have to unlock it to see the notifications.
Yeah.
That is, in marketing, the best real estate that you could possibly have right now. It's closer than a billboard. Somebody checks their phone, unlocks their phone 205 times a day. And so this is powerful in terms of engagement. So we talked about earlier in this episode, short form content, really great, top of funnel to be able to build awareness. It gets virality and it gets attention. Push notifications allows you to go deep and to get engagement. And what I mean by this is, you're likely listening to this on a podcast right now. Wherever you subscribe to podcasts, if it's an Apple podcast and you don't listen to an episode for 3 weeks, new episodes don't get downloaded onto your phone anymore. If you're watching a YouTube video, all the YouTubers always say, subscribe and hit the bell, subscribe and hit the bell, subscribe and hit the bell. Why do we do that? Because hitting the bell gets you push notifications. The power of these personal brand apps is consolidating everything in your LinkedIn bio all into one place, onto a property that you own, in a mobile app that you own, that doesn't have that algorithm between you and your audience. But the other beauty of it is, you might be listening to the BBG podcast, you download a BBG Lite app, and then now, anytime that there's a new blog post, you're getting push notifications for that blog post. Anytime that there's an online event, you're getting push notifications for that. Because it's really hard for somebody to come into your ecosystem where they may have discovered you on YouTube and they might not have any idea that you have an e-commerce store, or they might know you from the e-commerce store and they have no idea that you post blog posts. Because like, I'm not sitting around on blogs hitting refresh, like waiting for a new article. And so you have to be able to push that content to folks so that everybody sees and knows it. But when you do that, because the push notifications is really about nurture and relationship, when you have an offer, when you have a new program, when you have something that you're opening up, it's already there. You're not trying to move them to a web page or a website from your YouTube channel because everything's already in one app.
You know, it's interesting because I didn't connect the dots with this earlier until you were just talking, but you know, you go to the App Store today, it's like every large company has an app at this point. And this is not any different than what you were talking about earlier about how the large companies have been using AI, aka software engineers, for decades. It just wasn't accessible to the masses.
Right.
And it's the same thing with apps.
And it was the same thing with websites 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There was a point, like, believe it or not, because it seems like so long ago, there was a point when entrepreneurs were asking the question of, should I build a website?
Yeah. Which seems so foreign.
Which seems so foreign. But at the time, it was white pages. Businesses were listed in the white pages, and some businesses
had a website.
And there were some that said, no, I don't need that. I got my phone number in the white pages.
Who needs this digital
Who needs this digital thing? Today,
that's absurd.
It's absurd. Yeah. Right. We live in Nashville. We both live in Nashville. If we went to the farmer's market and we saw somebody setting up a new table with a new tent, there are two things that table definitely has today. They have a website, they can accept credit card, and they probably use either Square or Shopify to be able to have their online presence and accept credit card payments. That is like, you would be crazy to set up a new business at the farmer's market and only take cash.
You know, it's so funny you say that because I only know when the farmer's market is happening because of the different digital platforms that I follow that alert me.
Yes.
Right? It's like, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't even know it existed.
Correct. So across all the industries where Vyten plays today, right? So we want to help people live healthier, happier lives. We work with brick and mortar fitness studios. We work with online fitness live streamers. We work with chiropractors' offices. We work with folks who, teach parenting strategies, have, health strategies. Across all those spaces, the number one thing that we're seeing is this move towards the apps because upstream, right, Chipotle has an app, but if you are a local restaurant and you are making salads, your consumers are making a choice, right? If you're a local coffee shop, and you take a look at Starbucks' earnings report, Starbucks has over a third of their revenue is coming from revenue inside of the mobile app, inside the Starbucks app.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is crazy. But how is the local coffee shop
get to do that?
Do that because consumer preferences are clear. 88% of consumers prefer to interact with a business in their mobile app instead of the mobile website. And having a mobile-friendly website today is not enough anymore because we all know the experience of using an app. It's faster, it's more responsive. You're not doing that thing where you have to like zoom in and zoom out on your phone, and it's built for your phone. But the other thing that happens as well is if you're thinking, my website's already mobile friendly, that's enough. People will open up your mobile app 2.5 times more often than they'll visit your website. Back in the day when like AOL was a thing, we used to all bookmark websites, right? Today, nobody's bookmarking websites. You just do a Google search if you need to find a company's website, if you can remember the name of the company. The app icon that somebody saves onto your phone is kind of like that refrigerator magnet that the businesses used to send out, right? The refrigerator magnet was a thing because it was the reminder for you of that business and their phone number. Today, that is the app icon. Somebody unlocks their phone 205 times a day. They're either going to see your logo there or they're not. There's going to be either the red little bubble that says you have a notification or there's not. And every single day that a business doesn't build a website at that farmer's market is a day where they're sending their customers off to a competitor. All of the analysts and all of the big companies already know this is mobile apps, because the big players have been doing it
For a long time.
for a long time.
And this is the opportunity for the small business, the entrepreneur, the solopreneur, the content creator, the thought leader, the speaker, the author, the coach to get into the space.
Yes.
And that's what I hear you saying, right?
Yes. And that can be a scary and daunting thing, though, right? What is different now is that just like websites are possible for small businesses to have, the mobile apps are coming to be the same thing as well. You know, traditionally, if you wanted to custom build a mobile app, projects can start actually with Dad's Club. When I first started trying to build Dad's Club, I went out and I got quotes for what it was like to build that. And, you know, the average quote was like 50 to 150,000. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is on top of the copywriter that I'm going to need to be able to help me create the content. And today, it's possible to do that in a tenth of the price because the technology has just changed.
Oh, I will just tell you guys, if you are a part of the Brand Builders Group community, that we have two apps, right? We have a community app, which is just our like membership app. And when we were getting quotes for it, so it's been live for 2 years, took us a year to kind of get it live. So when I started initially getting quotes for the BBG app was probably 4 to 5 years ago. Minimum quotes were coming in at $250,000 for us to build this custom app. And I was like, what? That's crazy. Like, we're a small business. Like,
that's a down payment on a house.
Like, that's insanity. And also knowing it was going to be more expensive and take longer than what they were quoting, just like building a house, by the way. And so then I started looking at like other platforms. Like we looked at Mighty Networks and we looked at all these other different platforms, and they were all good in their own right, but none of them could do everything that we needed. Yes. But even then it was $30,000 a year in perpetuity.
In perpetuity.
And I'm like, and it doesn't even do all the things we wanted. And so we finally kind of like piecemealed together everything and created an app that almost had everything that we wanted, but not quite. But it still was, I mean, it still is going to be tens of thousands of dollars a year to pay for that. And it was also a painful process. And that's just the art of technology. It's a little bit painful. And when we got introduced to you, I was like, there has to be a trick. Like this can't be real, because it wasn't tens of thousands of dollars for a personal brand app. It was $2,500 at the time. And I have no doubt your prices will go up over the course of time. But it was more than that. It was done in a week.
Yeah.
And I was like, no way. They lie. They lie. No way. Because we had gone through the process. And I'm like, there's no way they're going to be doing all that for this. Like, how do they make money? And it's like, but learning the process in the business, it's like, well, that's what good systems, processes, a good team, automation, AI, and actually knowing what you're doing can actually help do that. And I share that to go because we invested into this, and we have two apps now. We have BBG for members, but we have BBG Lite, right? So this is everyone's hint. Go down BBG Lite. It's a free app, but it's for all these reasons, because we're experiencing the same things that everyone else is. Like the algorithm is changing. It's harder to reach our audience. The email open rates are lowering, even though these are in our email list, people who've opted in. And it's like, why aren't you opening our emails? And so we invested in this same thing to solve the same problem that we're talking about. But I think what made it so appealing is it is what you just said. It's like what has been available and around that we're already accustomed to. We just couldn't afford it, is now affordable for the small business owner, the solopreneur. And at $2,500, there's a pretty quick ROI in just being able to talk to your customers again.
Yes.
To be able to reach your audience. Yeah. Like that means a lot in a world where big business owns that right. And they get to decide when, how, and that's not cool. Right. So this is like really taking back control of your audience.
Yeah, and we've spent years refining the processes, to your point, to be able to make it possible to build a custom personal brand app in a week. And, you know, we kicked off your project on a Monday. By Wednesday, we were showing you every single screen in your app. You gave us some feedback on that Wednesday afternoon. By Thursday, we turned the revisions, and then we were submitting the app to Apple and Google on Friday. And I remember on Saturday,
we left for Mexico.
You and Rory and the family left for Mexico.
Better be ready.
But that's how much confidence that we had in the processes, because we've done this so many times. There's three things that really make us unique in the marketplace today. Our mission is to help people live healthier, happier lives. And the secondary to that, and just as important, is we want to make this type of technology that large companies have always had access to available to every single solopreneur, local entrepreneur, small business. And we do that by bringing simplicity and speed to the process. So we can do this in a week so that you can achieve the ROI. For many, many marketing agencies, salaries and labor is the biggest cost. By streamlining these processes, we're able to bring the amount of cost that it takes us to be able to build the app and then pass all of that through.
Yeah.
The simplicity part is talking about, we know that the process of building a mobile app can be really intimidating, which is why we take on all of the technical stuff. And, we work with majority companies that do not have a chief technology officer, do not have software development teams in-house, to be able to allow them to compete with the companies that do.
Yeah.
And, the second thing is just the number of features and integrations that we have allows you, to your point, to be able to tie all of these different things together that historically, if you bought a branded app, you're buying it from a company where the only thing that app does is provide you with a branded mobile app for whatever that company does. So you end up with either an e-commerce app that only does e-commerce, a food delivery app that only does food delivery, or a content app that only does content. And, there's two big trends that we're really seeing. The first one is the implementation of AI. So the BBG Lite app does have a custom GPT in it that is called BrandBot. And BrandBot is brilliant at actually helping you do the types of things that you would do if you were working with BBG in a strategy session or a content intensive. And, it's an incredible technology to be able to get leverage. But the second thing that we're seeing from that is this shift from mass content to micro personalized content. And what I mean by that is, when you think about 10 years ago, before streaming, there were only a few TV channels, and chances are during prime time, you and I, AJ, were probably watching the same type of show, right? If not the same show. Like, it was Friends, or it was, whatever you were watching. The next day you went to work and you talked to everybody about that. That's macro content, right? Micro content is closer to the streaming world right now, where we have so many options that we're all watching Love is Blind, so they still won that. But for the most part, we're watching different shows based on niches and based on, what you are interested in, as opposed to everybody in the US watching Friends. The future of entertainment is already heading into a space where 15 years from now, it'll be TV shows that are made for you, with characters that are made for you. And you might actually be the only one watching that show. But that same experience, if you run an online community or you create content online, is what's starting to happen as well at an individual level, because people have individual questions and individual needs. And so one example is, we have an app today that's called Worthy Self-Care. And Melissa, their founder, has an entire philosophy around wellness. And, they have advice about regulating, your nervous system, or ways to be able to reduce inflammation. And, she might get DMs on Instagram for asking for advice. And inside of her app now, she has an AI bot that is trained to not only give the responses that she would give, but it's writing out, here's a 4-point checklist with information on step-by-step how to do something. It's an infinitely patient version of her as well.
And accessible.
As well as it doesn't sleep. And so for, the person who's listening to this going like, I want to talk to a human, not an AI. The question that I would have is, what if the AI is saying and writing the thing that the human would, but is writing a much longer, more detailed version of it
and giving it to you
and giving it to you instantly? That is an example of a micro interaction. And that is where all of this technology is heading, because you can't write a blog post for each individual person because it's too specific. And what AI is allowing you to do is to be able to actually scale the technology to be able to make this possible. Because in the past, the only way that that was possible is in a very high ticket offer, where it has to be priced that way, because that's how much time it takes to deliver on that. And so just like these mobile apps are now becoming accessible, just like websites have become accessible to small businesses, building AI clones of the personal brand allows me, in the middle of the night, like I might wake up and go, I got this idea for a new podcast I want to start. And I'm curious what AJ and Rory think about like these two names for a new podcast.
Because we got opinions.
Because you got opinions, right? And I can throw it into the BBG Lite app, ask BrandBot, and BrandBot can not only give me the answer, but then like I don't have to be embarrassed that like I asked a question and I got the answer, but like maybe I was like too nervous to ask that question myself, right? There's a lot of topics where you
that's good.
You might have a question, but you might be too nervous to actually ask that question.
I think that happens a lot in all different topics. It's like there's lots of things we want to ask, but we're like, we don't want to sound dumb, or I don't want to be wrong. And so instead of doing the thing that we feel really called to do, we actually just hold it in.
Yeah.
And we don't even live out our life's calling. And these are giving us tools to go, hey, when you're not completely, certain about what to ask, like this is a forum to do that. So I want to give everyone an opportunity to learn more about Vyten and these personal brand apps. And so if you guys are listening to the show or you're catching up on the show notes, that you can go to the show notes and grab this link and just click on it. But I would encourage you guys, like, explore. Right? It's not going to be for everyone right now, but just like social media and websites, like this is not a fad. This is a trend. And it's trending in a mass wide scale offering that everyone is likely going to need it at some point because of this is the rise of the content economy. It's like it's not even rising, it's here, right? It's a flooding of the marketplace. So if you go to Vyten, Vyten, Vyten.com/BBG, then Vincent and his team will know that you heard this podcast, that you have some prelim information, that you have some context around this, and that'll help them tailor this conversation to everything that you heard on the show. So Vyten.com/BBG. Now, Vincent, before I let you go, I have just two last quick questions for everyone. So here's what I want to ask you as you're heading out. Number one, where can people go to just connect with you?
Yeah, for me, so on Instagram, Vincent Phamvan. I think there will be a link in the show notes. The company is Vyten Apps on Instagram, Vyten.apps as well. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And then what is your favorite app?
Oh, man, that is such a great question. Like right now, it's the Oura Ring. And so I'm wearing an Oura Ring right now, and every single thing that I'm doing this year is focused on being more rested, more restored. It's been a few months since I've had a drink of alcohol, and not because like I wanted to give up drinking, but because I am like 100% focused right now on just having good routines. And, the Oura Ring app has an Oura Advisor in it. And so, there's a lot of data that it gives you. And it used to be like you'd have to read about it. But just like I shared on this episode with like the micro interactions, like I can actually ask the Oura Ring, like, hey, my resting heart rate was, pretty low last night. Like, what are 3 things that I can do to be able to improve that? And so it's been a ride that I've been on, but I've been really excited.
Love that.
It.
And last question.
Yep.
What does influential mean to you?
I mean, influential means to me like going out and making an impact. And, I think part of the challenge today in like today's society is the word influencer is different than being influential. Because I think of an influencer as somebody who's like peddling something, whereas being influential is not with a goal that is selfish, but it's actually a goal of being selfless and going out and to be able to allow yourself to serve others for the improvement of their life, not your own.
Oh, that's good. I like that answer. I love the difference between influencer and influential. And I would say that you have been super influential in our journey at BBG and continue to be for our entire community. So thank you so much for being on the show. So many great highlights, so much wisdom. And I just love learning about what's happening in the marketplace that we don't get to talk about in everyday life. So y'all, again, go to vyten.com/BBG. Check it out. Learn about this trend in personal brand apps. And if you want to connect with Vincent, it's at Vincent Phamvan. And you can check him out on all social media channels. Y'all, we love you. Thanks for tuning in. Stick around for the recap episode, which will be coming up soon. We'll see you next time on The Influential Personal Brand.